All right. Look at that. That's pretty crisp. Um, all right, all right, all right. Let us see. All right, okay. So let me. I should take this part out, this part out. Mm, I wish this thing would stay without putting it inside. I have two screens to use right now, so it's gonna be a bit harder. Okay, okay. Hello, hello, hello. Does that come through on YouTube? Hello, hello. Oh, there you go. I can hear myself. Yes. Alfonso, mic's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna mute this thing. Perfect. All right, all right, all right. Looks like we got people here. Alfonso, thank you very much. Alfonso, if you could do me a favor, I need to record this stuff. Could you put your MDC ID, your MDC ID on the chat right now, just so I can record it for my tutoring purposes? Uh, Anyone that is on the chat, please make sure to put your MDC number on the chat. I would appreciate that. I'm gonna make a form or something, because I set this little stream very short notice, like I did it as soon as I got here. So the numbers, yeah, yeah, your MDC ID, MDC ID. All right, so let me open this guy up, and I'll just copy it later and put it on my little report. Uh, uh, uh. Well, let's see how it goes. I'm gonna be explaining some stuff today. So modularity, I think that this is useful to anyone. So modularity is pretty good. If you have not been following my class, you want to follow along. Uh, bring my changes. Bring my changes there. If you want to follow along, I will post the repository right now in the YouTube chat. Just go here, go to branch number 2, I believe, and then I'm gonna start talking about what all means. So where's the YouTube chat? Here. Perfect. Thank you so much, Alfonso. If you just want to follow along GitHub, there's the GitHub repo. All right, all right, all right. I'm gonna talk about what I did here. So if you haven't been following my classes, then you're not gonna be too aware of all this. I should really try to do something about this. Let me just deal with these technical things just for 1 second, if I can. Right. Thank you so much, Alfonso. We'll see if anyone else shows up. And this thing is good when you're making like larger programs. Let's wait a little bit because usually people take a little bit to show up. Let me just send another message on WhatsApp. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. And if it shows up there, actually, I'm gonna do what to cut the laptop HDMI. Yeah, there you go. So if you see that, uh, class is still going on 2206, and I hear you wanna come. All right. So we're not gonna be here. It looks like that's okay. Okay. Cool stuff, bro. So let's get ourselves started. So we got the game as it is right now. Uh, Alfonso, I'm gonna walk you through it really fast. So it's a very simple game at the moment, very simple stuff. So what things we have done is in here on the top we have a directory to the assets. These you can use later for like any other stuff, but basically always a proponent clean code. So you want to keep our stuff looking as clean as possible. That way you're always more productive. So you know I'll talk about this. I'll talk about this later. Just let me make sure that in case. So let me put this on a different mode so I can actually hear what all the stuff's about because otherwise I'm not gonna hear anything. Put my phone over there. I want to get distracted. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, this is how we start ordering our stuff here on the top. So you will see that I have an import here on the top, like I have imported some of my classes. So before I used to have, and we can take a look at it real quick. Before in update 2, we have our classes defined within the main in the main file, right? Which like for starters is okay, but over time this can get really convoluted the more stuff we added, especially also the input stuff is already here, so that is going to, you know, just crowd up all the space that we got here. And the more crowded something is, the less efficient you're going to be, it's going to take you longer to find anything that you want to be working on, right? So that's why we move. If you take a look at the difference between main.py 1 and main.py 2, that's the main difference. So let me, and I also added a, if you're interested, I added a description of all the changes inside of the GitHub desktop. No, it's not this one. Inside of the GitHub commits, in the description of all the commits, if we take a look, I put a not uh not not to say too much, but I put in the. So if you take a look here, I say the things that I added to this. So that's the 4, but we're going to be looking at 3. So if you look at 3, modularity. So we separated the coding modules. We're addressing missing variables, best practices, passing variable as reference. So, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about that. So good that I leave that there. Good that I leave that there. So variables as reference, very useful, very useful, very useful. So that's that's the difference between update 2 and update 3. So let's take a look at update 3. So I have sent all of that way. Um, so in here we have, you know, I will talk about that. So we have the key press, fairly simple, just to check what keys you're pressing, fairly simple. Just to give you A and D movement, fairly simple. Game init, time clock, well, we know what this is. We know what this is. Uh, we know what all of that is. I think that I did set something like that up somewhere in here. Let's see, because the pass as reference part I put somewhere in here. But either way, I made it first. I made my classes first here on this main function, and then I basically just copy them and I paste them in these new little files that I made here. So we go here. Look at that. All here. I had to re-put all this stuff up here. I think that there's probably a better way to do this, but I'll think about that later. Um, let me expand this a little bit. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There you go, there you go, there you go. So yeah, we have everything here. Check our inputs, check everything here. All right, I managed to make it into the class. Very nice, Dino. I'm not sure who you are, but oh, Dino, if you are, could you also, if you get a little second, could you please put your also your MDC ID so I can log it on my thing for later? I would really appreciate that. But yeah, so all right, I managed to make it into a class. So you mean, oh, Alberto? Oh, no worries. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, as Alberto. Perfect, perfect, perfect. No worries. Dope. So yeah. So if you see here, yeah, what I did is basically I created a new file. You probably looks nice, King. Oh, Fernando. Oh, what's up, man? Nice to see you. If you want to take a look at the class, also, I don't have your MDCAD. Could you please put it on the chat? Uh, and we have Andrea Caballero. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting that there. Thank you so much, guys. So, cool. So nice to see everyone here. I have four people viewing. Very nice. Uh, thank you guys for stopping by. All right. So you make a class, right? First we had it in main. Now we put it. Just make a new thing. Put an entity. So when I first did that, right? I had a couple of my things were missing. So how did I? Let me just and it was these things here on the top. So these were references. So when if you ever end up taking some sort of programming course here, there, everywhere, they'll always tell you that adding global variables is kind of bad practice. That's the reason why is that global variables are dependent on the scope, right? So a truly global variable, you could say that it's like any of the Python methods. For example, if I say class in a way is also a global variable because no matter where I write it inside of the Python scope, it knows what a class is. So if I were to, I think there's a way to actually set something as a global variable, but the more global variables you add, the more confused you can get because the effects of a global variable are cascading. If you have done maybe CSS, you know this and you know how annoying it can be to deal with cascading factors. Basically, you write a variable in the beginning of your code, and then you write that same variable for a different reason at a class that is a couple of layers below that class, and it gives you some different outcome and you have no idea why. Is usually because of that, because if you add too many global variables you have a cascading effect, right? So so yeah so I these variables right here should be and I do have a solution for this that I have added to my other games, but to my other physics engines. I'll get into that later. Is basically making basically the game class all composing. So we'll talk about that later, but that's when we're going to start talking about the subclasses. So let's not get into that later. Let's not get into that right now. We'll get into that later. So for now, if I'll just give an example real quick. So if I try to run the game right now, and also don't run it, don't run it from the entity because it's gonna give you an error. Because if you run it from entity here, it's gonna give you an error because it's trying to run entity as the main function. You have to click on main and then run. Should run, and it doesn't run because assets there is not defined. So when you are like debugging your stuff, just take a look at the name of the things that it says not defined, and that probably means that you're just missing a variable. So if you're missing a variable, just go ahead, type it again, put it right here close to the top, and now all my variables that needed uh, showing are there. So we have the screen size, although the screen size could be different, but let's not worry about that too much. So not much. There's not much differences here. Not much differences here. Just copy pasted the whole thing and put it in a different file. Same thing for game. Let me check because I put notes on my thing here. So passing variables by reference. This is very important. I don't remember exactly where I used it though. So I think that has to do, let me check. I think that has to do, let's talk about that because if you guys are taking a programming class, for C, definitely. For Java probably too. Yeah, they'll ask you about yeah. So variables. So passing a variable by reference. What does that mean? Okay. So let me explain to you what that means because that will be very important. And in the change position, actually, in the change position, I think there's an example or let me just check that real quick. This function position by entity coordinates. So this, yeah, this makes you go to specific position, but no, I don't think that's. Oh, I believe it's this one. Inputs active. Let me check. Let me check. Let me check. Key pressed. Self that key pressed. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. With the key pressed. With the key pressed. That is it. So let me see where I put that part. That part's gonna be important. Your game's not gonna work if you don't do this part. So let me check that real quick. Positive key inputs. Let me just check. Let me just check. Let me just check. Set right key equals true. True, true, key press. Where am I getting key pressed from? Self that key pressed. Self that key pressed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think the game. Oh, so but I actually can show you. So the game work at the moment. So my. Oh, actually no, it works. Oh, that's crazy. How does it work? What the hell? You kidding me? Oh, well, one set key press to key. Oh, there it is. So and that has a. Just let me check because I did this code a little bit back. So I keep. Oh, there it is. Okay, here it is. So here you go. There's the prime. This is the prime example of passing a variable by reference. Okay, so very important concept. Very important concept. So usually, okay, so usually when you're passing a variable, right? When you call a function such as this one, right? Oh, what the? 1 second. Wait. Uh, 1 second. Rudy's calling me. Uh, uh, okay, there you go. There you are. Oh, so Rudy's here too. Oh, let me check. So I agree with it. Which brand of code, which brand of code? We're on update 3 right now. So I am doing this is a being live stream, so I'm doing this on YouTube. So I got 2 people watching right now. So dopey dope. So there you go. So we're on branch 2. So I believe it's Alfonso and Alberto. So let me explain to them what. So Alfonso maybe knows. We'll see. So this is this branch of code, the one that I'm currently working on, is it's called update 3. So in the Shark class is update 3. Okay. So now, so what are we doing here? So usually when you have a function, it works kind of like this. So you have the function caller here. So we'll have a should make it as big as I can. Let me switch to the other screen. So let me check this. Let me switch to the board screen. There you go. Dope. Okay. So usually, let's say you have the class, right? You have the class here. The class creates an object, right? Does it not does it not sync? Well, yeah, see how that look. Uh, does it look good? Can you guys see? Maybe is it hard to see? Damn, yeah, it is hard to see. Damn. Yeah, can I go closer? All right. And oh, is it like? Oh, let me invert the screen too. Let me invert the screen so you can. So how do I transform? Flip horizontal. So now it should be readable. It's a bit blurry. So you can read that the right class. A lot of light. Let's see. Oh, I want to see if I want put it down there. Let's see. Let's see how it looks when I start writing. So I do here. I'm gonna try to write as big as I can. Okay. And is that the right way? The right way? Can you guys read that? Let's see. Is it gonna flip that? 1 second. So transform, flip horizontally. Does that make can you read that? No. I didn't think about me having to flip the camera. High show, blending, hide show. Uh, flip vertical? Why am I? Oh, I'm flipping that one. There you go. Okay, my bad. So I'm gonna leave it like that just because it's funny. Uh, where's the transform? I'm blind. Flip horizontal. There you go. All right. There you go. Now, okay. We'll see how what we can do. So you got a class, okay? The class creates an object. Oh, hey man, Richard's here. Remember to put you up for that too. So the class creates an object, right? Now, and the object has a function, okay? The function takes a parameter, right? The function takes a parameter, right? This is sent by the function caller. So if, am I still on the board? Okay, there you go. So I can turn the camera up a little bit. There you go. Turn the camera up a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. Man, it's the windows. I if I could just flip it the other way around. Yeah, for next time. Okay, so the function gives you a parameter. I'm gonna try to work down here. So yeah, the function gives you you can send a parameter to the function, right? Now the object over here, object, okay, the object itself, uh, if you call the function, let's say open door, we'll just go for something simple, okay? And then the open door object, okay, the open door function, I mean, requires you to tell you what door you want to open, okay? So that would go here, right? You need to tell it what door you want to open. So then there's two ways of doing that. Have a message there. I think the audio's cutting. Uh, Let me know if it keeps cutting out. I can see better now. I'm on my desktop, so chilling. Very good. Uh, Andrea, please let me know if the audio keeps cutting. Okay. Uh, okay. So now there's two ways of doing this. Okay. So first way is passing the variable directly. Uh, or it has a different name, but that's just usually what I call it. But I'll explain to you what it is. So if you get the concept, probably better. Direct directly, or you can pass it by reference. Okay. So what do these two do? Okay, this one, the direct method, okay, is the value. Okay, you're sending the value of something. Okay, so if let's say if let's say you have a hotel, okay, have a hotel. This is my little hotel, and I have a bunch of doors here, and they all have little numbers on them. So this is door number one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, and so on, right? Uh, and I can just refer to this by a value, right? So if I know that I want to open door one, I'm gonna open this door, right? I'm gonna refer to this other structure that I have and say I'm gonna open that door, okay? So I say, uh, good now, okay, very nice. Okay, so I'm gonna say if I'm passing the value directly, right? I'm just passing the value. I'm just saying number open door, and then in here I just say like the number two. I'm gonna just send the value, and what happens actually, like within the computer, is that it copies this value, it makes a copy of this value, copies it, and sends it to the parameter. Okay, so it's a copy. Okay, it's a copy of this of the value. Okay, it's a copy of the value. Important to understand. Now, when you do it by reference, okay, when you do it by reference, you are not sending any value. What you are sending is a reference to the memory slot. So if you think about when I first talked about this, about the example of a house, right? And that the memory slots would be the addresses in memory of this. So if you think about your house, like one, uh, 1 116 Northwest, something something, you're referring to an address, okay? So when you send it by reference, it could be me as saying I'm sending the position of this room, okay? So like if I'm sending the address of the room. So like now let's say that instead of sending the like I want to go to room number one, I'm saying you will be sending something like I want to go to hotel ho- instead of sending that you would send like Felipe's hotel, Felipe's hotel, Florida room 3. Okay? So you're sending the address of the instead of making a reference from a value, which is what you do when you send it directly, you do a reference to the memory space that that thing is occupying. Okay? So how is this useful? Okay? How is this useful? Because when we send things directly, we can usually just do one value at a time, okay? Because we can just copy you can just copy, for example, if it's a word, you will have to copy the word and then paste it somewhere else for the thing to read it, okay? If it's just a number, you just copy the number and paste the number somewhere else, and the thing reads that copied version of the number. Okay. Now, if you do it by reference, okay, if you do it by reference, you are sending not the number itself, but a reference where the number is. Okay. So if inside of any of these rooms, I had another I don't know, couple of numbers or whatever. Like I could send many other things. So like I could be referring to many other things. I could be referring to inside of this room I kept 5 elephants, okay, or I kept 5 mouses, okay. So depending on what is inside of that room, it could be anything. So That's the power of sending something by reference. Instead of sending basically a copied value or like a copied, just a plain value, you are sending the place where you will be able to find other stuff. And another important differences between the two is that since when you send it directly, okay, you are making a copy of this, so you don't affect the main function where you're calling it from. So it is a safer way because then you don't affect the rest of the program. You just get a value, you send the value to this little factory, and then the factory processes it, and then it spits out another value, but then the value that came in first is safe. When you do it by reference, if you do any changes to that value, you are changing the value on the outside function. Okay? So I hope that that was clear. Any questions about that? Any questions here about this? Okay. Anyone any questions? I hope. Well, we'll see. I maybe try to do that again sometimes to make it a little bit more structured. But yeah, that's kind of like how that works. So now let's look at it on the code because I always think that it's a little bit better to see it on the code. So this is in reference to class parameters. Yes. Well, to class parameters to function parameters, right? So if you take a look at the entity class, okay, let's take a look at the entity class. And then in here, look, I am in this, it is on line 40 on my code, but you will need this on your code too. If you are, for example, you, Alberto, that you're following along fully in line 40, okay, you see this thing here. It says set key pressed. So what I'm referring to here is the object that contains all the key presses, right? So if we take a look at main, it's an object, right? So key pressed is this little object right here. This contains the true or false values of what key I have pressed, and that is based on me pressing the keys over here. So when you think about what I'm sending here, when I ask for that exact value, because you see, I'm sending it here, okay? I am not sending just like a snapshot, like a copy of what the current values of key pressed are, because that would be useless, right? What I'm doing when I do this thing here, I send a reference to the memory slot that contains all those things, which is here. So I have a box with a couple of things inside of it, okay? And I'm not sending you a copy of the box. I'm sending you a reference where the box is located, okay? So then whenever you need to modify the box or check what's inside of the box, you don't make a new box and check inside of that box. You go to the box itself and you're like, okay, is there anything new on this box? Okay. So now I set that to the object here. So basically I'm setting it as I'm adding a new little spot of memory inside of my class here, right? And then I use it for other things. Like, what do I use it for? I use it to check the inputs. So in your entity class, key pressed, right, is just key press. It's not self.keypress because if when it was inside of the main function over here, right, it could just refer to directly to this object right here, right? But now, since it is in a different page, it can no longer reference that object. So I need to send it to it, and I'm sending it not as a copy of the object, but as a reference to the object uh, inside of a different module. Module. There you go. Module is the right word, but it's on a different page. Uh, the functions are basically these guys. This is like the functions is you didn't come to my other classes, but I can recapitulate on this real quick while they try to catch up. Let me know if you guys are caught up with everything real quick here on the chat too, real quick. But in classes, right? We have I'll give you a quick rundown of the structure of a class, okay? Because this is if you want to take any programming classes or if you want to end up doing because you want to do some programming on the Python stuff too, this is very useful to structure your code and make it just better. Because you can get decently far just making like pages of code, but this will make allow you to make even more and more impressive things. abstraction is the key to making very cool, impressive applications because you could say that most of the things that we do are abstractions of very simple processes. So, for example, me having to like just do this with my finger is an incredibly, insanely complex process because I am sending blood to a bunch of little muscles in here, and those muscles are contracting in a specific way that makes this happen, right? And I'm sending it to millions of muscles just to do this, right? So muscle fibers, right? And they all have to act in a very specific way, right? But I don't think about like I need to actuate like muscle one, two, three, four, five, six, one trillion, right? I only think like lower finger. Okay, so an abstraction is that is when you have a very complex thing simplified to an easier thing. So that's usually what classes help you with. So what a class is, okay? What a class is, I always say this is a blueprint for a house. Okay, it's a blueprint for a house. You cannot live inside of the blueprint of a house, right? You can just see what a house is supposed to look like, right? So a class is the blueprint. And then the object, you could say, is the house itself. And it also shares a couple of the shares a couple of the properties of an actual objective house because a house is located in a place of property, right? And your property has an address, right? You have an address. That address is also reflected in a computer because a computer has memory and each a memory has addresses, right? So when it's just a class house, right? It doesn't have an address because it's just a it's just a sketch of what the house is supposed to look like. But when you turn it into an object, right? Now it does have an address. It's a physical house. It's a house that you can interact with, right? This house, the class, you don't interact with. The object, you do interact with. You make it do things. Mhm. So that is the basic definition of what a class and object relationship is like. So you make a lot of classes to define a lot of the structures that you're gonna do, and then you make objects to interact with those structures. Make sense? Okay, so let me see how this is going. Good now. Good now. Okay. Are you guys good? Can I keep going? How is it going for you guys? Let me know. I'm definitely not caught up with the object parameter. Okay, I can talk about the object parameters. Let me talk about that. Since it's good to recap all this stuff. Make sure. And more than anything, always practice makes perfect. So I'm gonna try to say that again in a different way. See, I can make it a little bit more structured. Because also functions work outside of objects. So let's just talk about functions. Let's just talk about functions in an isolated manner. Okay, functions work pretty much like math, right? Like functions are like little factories, right? So you have your little factory here, right? Let me switch to the other view. Oh no, I mean the code. I understand the logic. Oh, okay, okay. Uh, though. Uh, So we don't want to talk about function parameters. Let me know because I can talk about it a little bit because would you like me to talk about it a little bit while he catches up? Of what a function is in code. Could you describe it to me? Mm-hmm. 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 So remember, there's two things. There's two things about classes. Okay, classes have properties and functions. So what you did there is more akin to describing properties, right? Because those, like the doors, how many windows. That's more of what a property would be, right? Like a property of the house that would have five windows, or of a property of a house is it will have windows, and then you get to choose how many windows it will have, right? So a function is more of is something that is more like actionable, right? Because if we let's talk about functions in isolation, because functions work regardless of classes, right? So but classes have functions, okay? Let's talk, let's put it on that in that way. So if we think about a function in the math way, right? Like you do f of x is equal to x plus 4. You know, something ridiculously simple like that, right? So can it be seen there? Okay, yeah, it can be seen. So plus 4, right? So you have a little factory. You give it an input, right? And then you get your output. So if you put whatever number you put here, so we do f of, I don't know, 4, f of 4 equal to 4 plus 4, and that gives you a result that goes this way, right? So it goes this way. 8 is equal to 4 plus 4, right? That's 2, 4 plus 4, right? Simple, right? So you use this is like a little factory, okay? So you send things to the factory, you say inputs to the factory, which is your x, and then you get outputs, okay? So if you think about that, you're sending things this way, and things are coming out the other way, right? Things are coming out the other way. So now, when I talk about the parameters, right? So if we talk about, it works the same in math, right? You could say that x right here is your parameter, okay? X right here is your parameter. It's equal to, oh, just do the same thing, plus 4, right? X right here is your parameter, because what does it mean here? It means that this is also kind of like a template, because this is the undone function, right? Then when you talk about an argument, right, is when you actually send the thing. Is when you actually send the value here, and then it becomes an argument, because you have sent the value and you are arguing that this thing goes here, and then it gives you the output, correct? So in the programming sense, right, when you make the function, so we'll just do it the Python way, def sum, and then here you have x comma y, so you're sending two numbers, right? And then what the function is going to do is going to do x, or we'll just do here return x plus y. If I were to put it on the math sense, it'd be f of x comma y is equal to x plus y. Right? Fairly simple, right? It's the same thing. This is the pure math way. This is the Python programming way, right? There you go. So now, and but then, like, this is the template, right? Because this is not the actual used function, right? When you are actually, let's say, using the function, let's say that you were going to actually use this function for whatever reason. You were going to use it to, I don't know, calculate, like, I don't know, I cannot think of an example of you summing things like how much did you get paid for how many days you worked, whatever. So you said I worked 5 days. I work 5 days and I get paid $10 every day I work. So then you put x 5 plus 10. Oh, well, it would be times. We'll just do it. We'll just do it times to actually make this thing make sense. And that gives you 50, right? You get paid $50. Pretty bad pay, but it is what it is. Or what you just call this alt. Uh-huh. There you go. So bada bing, bada boom. Now this is the definition, right? This is also the active function. I'm not sure, they must have an actual name, but I don't know what the name is. But in programming, you would use then mult 5, comma 10, and that is going to return you a 50. Okay? So pure math, Python. Okay? So now these things, you can add a bunch of this to classes. So now all of these little functions, you can add them all to a class and then operate with the parameters of the class, because the class will have, so for example, then you have your class that contains a house, and then you have how many, I don't know, how many people live on the house, and then how much people spend every day on the house. And then you can say like, oh, so the total spending of the house is the amount of people times the amount of spending each of them make, you know. So that's why the class allows you to contain a bunch of values, and then the functions allow you to operate with all those values. You know, so that is an overview of that. So cool stuff. So let me go back
You
to.
know, this makes math make a lot more sense. Makes sense, right? It would, I should have just shown me this.
Programming helps with that.
Now I'm going to math, but I'm gonna let my professor know.
Sure. No.
Yeah.
Make them. I solved a bunch of my physics classes by doing programming like this. So
Well, now I know.
yeah, now you know.
I know
So
11:05, so this is exactly what I'm doing right now. F of x.
do it, do it.
All right, guys.
Take care, man. All right. So cool stuff. All right. So after that little bit of math explanation, okay. So all right, how's everyone else doing here? I hope you guys are still tuned in. I hope that wasn't boring for you guys. But well, let's take a look. So, okay, so Alberto, did you manage to make it work? If not, let me know if you have any problems. I'm gonna see if I can also check with Richard, see if there's any problems with his stuff. So let me know, guys, because for me, look, my thing's working. So right now, what you should be seeing on your screen is the three balls, and they can move around, you know? Do you have that?
Oh no, so mine's gonna pass up smooth inside.
Can you make them so it's double you can make them bounce? Oh, but you need to separate the code too.
And I'm separating for,
So,
for each one.
so for each class, right? So remember here, look at so take a look at the screen right now. This is what you're gonna do. You weren't here for that beginning part, so let me show that real quick. Let me reiterate on that. So I have my main function. So let me go back. So if I go to update to leave my changes there. So on update 2, you kind of look like this, right? You have your main class. Let me get rid of this. You have your main class, and you see game right below it, right? You see game right here, correct?
All right, yeah.
So look what you're gonna do. You're gonna go here. You're gonna create a new file. You tap the top here, make a new file. You're gonna call it game with capital .py, okay? And then you're going to just copy your game like this. You're gonna copy the entire game like that. Well, you cut it. You control X. You cut it out of there, and then you paste it in here. There you go. And then you gotta import it. So you do at the top of. So think about what you're doing, right? You're making another file, right? You're storing the code there, and now you're gonna bring that code to the main file. So how are we gonna do that? We're gonna do from game, which is the you see is the name of the file, game with capital G. From import game. So we are getting the class game. So in here you see I have a class that is called game. I'm importing that class from the file game. We could probably differentiate this a little bit better, but yeah. So go ahead, give that one a look. Let me bada bing, bada boom. Let me discard all the changes. Then go back to up to the other update. Then I go to 3. So let me know if that works and do the same for entity and let me know if anyone is having some problems. So it works, but I don't have the object parameter. So are you able, Alberto, are you able to make your guys move? Okay, so they do move. Do they all move or does only one move? So when you what you must have, right? Oh, remember, Alberto, remember that you need to delete the game and the entity from your main file. Do remember that? So you see how my file looks? My main file is around 80 lines of code, okay? Only one moves, okay? All right, that's interesting. I wish I could see your code just to make sure that everything's all right. But just do make sure, Alberto, that your main function is around 100, maybe less than 100 lines of code. Okay. Oh, by the way, sorry, Richard. So to import, you do this. Look from the file. So that's game, import the game. So you're from the file name. Let me actually change this real quick just to make it a bit more. So I'm gonna name it class game. I'm gonna name it class entity. So it's easy to do class entity. So from class game from class entity. So what I'm doing here is look from the name of the file, right, is class. So from class game, I'm importing the game, which is the class that is inside of that game, inside of that file. All right. Well, if it works, that's good. Let me just check, make sure that everything's all right. So, oh, look at that guy. That guy's going down a little bit. This part? Yeah, it's just a note. Yeah, don't worry about it. Actually, I can delete this part. All right. So with this, we are done with this part. Next class, I'm gonna be talking about arrays, which is probably my favorite topic in all of programming stuff. The amount of stuff that you can do with arrays is crazy. You could even say that arrays, or like AI, is just array math. So like you use, or matrix matrix math. Matrices are just arrays, but a bunch of them together. So yeah, we're gonna do that, and that from that one, we're gonna get a bit more crazy because then we're gonna get into collision. Collision opens the door for very cool concepts inside of software design because yeah, you just have to optimize very complex things. So I will leave you guys with this little bit of a concept so we can start thinking about it for next class. Okay. So Alberto already did some of the stuff here. Alberto, your stuff is working. You're doing amazing. Okay, now let me leave you with something that you can think about for the rest of the stuff. Okay. So when we are doing collisions, okay, and Richard, how's it going? Did you do?
Yeah, I don't know, something's going on with my name.
Let me help Richard out real quick, and then I'm out. Do that.
So
Let's see. Entity. Perfect. And no, this one should be empty. It should be because you're from entity class. So oh no, but you need to put it inside. So here, oh, okay, you do have this one. Oh, then you do have to correct some of this stuff. That's fine. From here, so what you need is whoa. Well, how much did it code?
you said Control X and then
No,
paste it into
no, just the class, just the class. Wait, wait. Damn, son. Oh, you got all of it. Wait, hold on. Let me see. Oh, okay, yeah, the entities here too. Hold on, let me. So let me show you what I meant. Let me here, here, up to here. This one, we'll probably have to do a couple of things on the name. Put it down here, there. So take a look. So the game, right, is only like the class game is only that part up until the next class, which is this other guy. This other guy is bigger, so you copy it here, and then you put it here. So save this one, save that one, and save this one. Now you see it actually imports them now. So actually not this one, but in this one is entity. You see it already autocorrected it because you're importing entity here, right? So now you actually have some way to refer to this guy. So you see this guy, and this guy have been imported from this guy. Okay. So now for this, now you have all these underlinings. You need to basically solve the imports. So these things were getting imported from somewhere else. So for example, Pygame, you're gonna have to import it again. So you go up here and then you'll do import Pygame. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Now screen is a little more difficult. The screen you'll have to basically do self.screen. Actually, it's not that hard. You already have it. Screen. So you do self dot because you already have that imported from before. There you go. Now, well, that solves this one fully. So this one solved. Now see if you can try to solve this other one. I'll let you try to solve this other one. So you already saw me solve that one. You need to solve the screen size. So where did you use to import the screen size from before?
from main part.
From the main file. So you can just grab that import and put it there. Okay, cool stuff. So let me just leave you guys before I go. I have 4 more minutes. I'm gonna talk about this thing really fast. Oh, let me get my marker. So mathematically, how do we on this first the step of solving for collisions, right? How do we know that two things are touching? Okay, we have their positions, right? Have their positions, which are usually at the top left. So we have an x and y position, and then we have a width and a height, right? Which are all numbers. So I'm gonna say this is W and this is H. Okay? Can you guys see? Hmm. I need to get a better board. Or I need to angle this. I'm gonna try to make it bigger. So W, H, and this point right here is X and is Y. Right? So we have an object, okay? When I import the class, it says indentations from the draw function, even though seems to be correctly in the. So, Roberto, that's one of the main one of my main gripes with Python. So usually when you copy paste stuff, sometimes it will give you this very silly, annoying mistake that it it thinks that the tabs are spaces and that spaces are tabs or some combination of those. So that indentation error means that you probably have to just all the indentations, just delete them and then put them back up in the correct way. There's no real other way to go about that. So yeah, you're just gonna have to basically delete the indentations and put them back again. So just keep in mind that Python like derives scope just by indentation, which is a little bit annoying on that regard, but that's what you gotta do. So basically, the indentation in Python is four spaces. Okay, so every time that you do four spaces to the right, it will consider that a new scope of a function. Okay, so in other languages you have the brackets that you can put however you want and whatever is between the brackets this is one scope and if there's another scope within the scope that's another scope, you know. So for Python basically it's just how much indentation each line has. So if at the beginning you have four spaces and then you have eight spaces, so this is one scope and this is another scope. So yeah. So basically, you just have to do that. I can help you do that on class if you're around later, but I'll show you. But it's basically you just have to redo the indentation because Python sometimes. Well, I think that's more of a VS Code problem, but it is what it is. So let me just say this before I have to go. So we have this, right? And the way that we know that this is touching with something else, right, is if we know that the opposite sides are touching. So basically, let's say for the x value. So if my x value on this box, right, if the x value of this box is lesser than the x value of this box plus the width, so if we were to make it into equation, I'll just say z is equal to, or no, we'll do that inequality, which is the right way to do it. So would be x plus x1, I'll call this x1, 2, 2. So if x1 plus w1 is lesser, yeah, is lesser than x2. If it's lesser than x2, then they're touching, right? Because it means that this guy is somewhere within here, right? But also, then you have to keep in mind, what if it's down here, right? The x and the y are I mean the x and the width are merging, but not the y. So you need to do another one for the y, okay? And that what tells you basically are they touching also on the y-axis? So then you know they're touching, and you don't need to do it. You only don't do it from one side. You have to do it from the right, from the left. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind. Okay, so I'll talk about that soon, but that's a lot, and I'm also done with the class for now. I'll be sure to lab later. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, guys. The ones that stayed. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I will be looking back at this thing later. So let me actually just copy this thing. So because I don't know if the YouTube chat is gonna save. So thank you so much for stopping by. I'll see you later, guys.